Moms spend a lot of time guiding and encouraging kids, but sometimes we need advice to help stay motivated and positive too. In today's edition of our Mind Over Matter series, we're sharing 5 parenting mantras to help you win at family life. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson joins me. I don't know if you know this, but let me just tell you, you're in my head all the time. I recite things that you say to me all the time, and I think I'm representing a lot of viewers out there, but these are little like back pocket phrases we can pull from.
They are, and say them all the time. A mantra is meant to be said, and if you have to say it 50 times, say it 50 times, right? Because here's where we're looking for a change. What we say in our head is the only thing essentially that we hear all day long.
That's true.
Right? Yes, we hear what's going on around us and that affects us, but we repeat in our head to ourselves and about our family, our kids and our spouse and the people around us. And this is a voice that's teaching us, it's leading us, it's guiding us. So we got to be mindful of what is being said all the time.
And I think that's why I love this series, this Mind Over Matter mantra series, because we do need to coach ourselves up in every aspect of life. So often moms are on the forefront, as you know, as I know, coaching everybody around us, from kids to spouses to families. We've got to be able to build our own voice up.
We do, and we've got to take that time to sit with it and go, wait a second, what am I telling myself right now? What's going on with this situation? Even this segment, which is so funny, I should have brought my students, because these next 5 mantras are things I force them to say to me 1,000 times in 4 months. I want to hear them again and again and again.
Yeah.
And the very first one that I ask them to start saying to themselves is that it is not about behavior.
You've said this here in the studio
over and over.
Too.
It is not about behavior. Remember, behavior is just a symptom of what's really hurting. Behavior is a byproduct of where the problem really lies. And so it would be just like having a sick child, and we're so focused on the fever that we never take them to the doctor to get the antibiotic that takes care of the virus that caused the fever, right? And so if we can get down to what really hurts, then that takes care of those symptoms.
I got into this conversation with a girlfriend, and she's really struggling, her 7-year-old son, with manners. Does that apply to manners as well, etiquette?
Absolutely. Oftentimes, for example, with manners, kids don't feel like they have any control. And so what's really hurting them is that they don't feel like they have any control over their own lives. And so they act out in different ways, like poor manners, like disobedience, things like that. I know just last night, our daughter, who's 13, who is amazing in every way, we were going through what the night looked like, which included, you got to take a shower, we need to wash your hair today, pack your backpack, clean your, those things.
All the checklist.
They were very hard for her to wrap her head around, and they're not usually, but she didn't really want to obey. She didn't really want to do them. She was reactive. She was frustrated. And so as I reminded myself, Heather, it's not about behavior. It's not about behavior. We sat down and, quick story, she went on to tell me that day in school, she'd put a lot of energy and effort into a school presentation. And she felt like when she delivered it, nobody listened. People were talking this, and so she felt disrespected.
So there it was.
So there we go. And so it really is just a byproduct. In fact, the funny part was when she looked at me and she's like, it's not that I don't know how to shower. It's just I feel disrespected. And I was like, well, let's forget the shower. Let's talk about the disrespected.
Yeah.
So we got to get down to what it is. It's not about behavior.
I love that you taught your kids to identify that too. Not
We're
about the
working on
shower.
it.
It's about the disrespect. What can we say, Heather, in those moments where maybe the meltdowns are happening, the behavior's out of control, to keep our cool as moms?
Okay, this is all about respond, don't react. Again, respond, don't react.
Now,
Heather, respond, don't react.
What's the difference?
Reactivity comes from emotion. It's when emotion governs the decisions we make. That's reactivity. That's being reactive. Responding is coming from a place where our goal is to understand. Responding has a calmness to it. It has a thoughtfulness to it. But my goal in responding is I'm seeking to understand. When I'm being reactive, it's purely emotion. I'm annoyed. I'm frustrated. I'm put out. I'm running out of time, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, obey, and I want to react, and so I let my emotion govern. So the goal here is to respond. If my goal is to understand my kids or my husband, that's very different than reacting or letting emotion guide what I do when it comes to them.
Got it, got it. This next mantra is structured in the form of a question, and I understand it's a question you say to yourself quite often.
All the time. It's my very favorite, and that is, what is the most important thing I want in this relationship? And I know it's a little bit longer, but here's why questions matter. We don't realize it often unless we bring attention to it, but we find answers to whatever question we ask. So if I'm asking myself, why is my 6-year-old so irritating, right? Why are you so annoying? Why are you so disobedient? Why won't you this? I'm gonna find all the reasons why she can be a pain. But if I'm asking myself, why is my daughter amazing? What's the most important thing I want in this relationship, right? Now, the most important thing I want with my kids is not to yell, is not to scream, is not to be impatient, is not to throw fits, is not to lose my temper. Isn't that funny, right? The most important thing I want is for them to know I love them, for us to have mutual understanding, for them to know that I'm working to always be patient for their thoughts and feelings. And so when I ask myself, what's the most important thing I want? The answer then elicits behavior that gets me answers to that question.
I love that you're putting the power on the question, too.
Always.
When I speak to middle schoolers or to youth, they're always, I'm always often, I should say, asked to use my career to draw parallel examples that these 13-year-olds will understand. And that's kind of sometimes a stretch for me, but I always emphasize the power of questions, which is what I do for a living, what I do here every day. But I like that the power of the questions you ask will dictate the emotional responses that you get in return.
It's exactly right. And this is with a spouse. I mean, think during the day how many times we ask the wrong questions in our head.
Yes.
And as a result, those are the answers we find. That's then what fills our mind all day. Well, if I want to know why someone's annoying, I sure as heck am going to find reasons why they are, right? And this is on the road. This is when we're going through a drive-through. This is in the grocery store. So it's really important that we ask the questions to get those answers that give us perspective.
I love that one. That's my adopted favorite,
I know,
too,
it's a good one. It's a good one.
Does anything help make decisions about parenting easier?
Yes, be intentional. Hands down. And the funny thing is we can take all 5 of these and actually just say them all in a row, just all hooked together. But be intentional can even override, well, they all can. When we're intentional, it puts us in a space where we're going to regroup to decide what we want the moment to look like. Now, we hear this and we often think that this means perfection. That is not what we're talking about here, right? Intentionality is in essence the opposite of entropy. Entropy, if we go way back to science, is essentially a steady disintegration of something falling apart. And so this is what happens in our relationships. It happens with our children and our families. It happens with family dinner. It happens all the time. And so when we're intentional, it's stopping long enough to say, what do I want this moment to look like? Well, I got to put my phone down because I actually want to hear you and then respond in a way that shows you that I love you and I'm listening. Right?
Is intention what's missing, do you think, in a large part in our society when we talk about technology distractions and all of those things?
Right? We're not being intentional about what the time and space actually looks like. And again, it's not making it perfect. It's just putting forth the energy in that moment to make it what you hope it to be, right? To put forth the energy to create is what we're doing. There's so much power in just simply being intentional.
When all else fails, Heather says breathe.
Breathe. 3 times. At least 3. I usually say it to myself 3 times, right? Breathing. And the funny thing, here's the first thing about breathing, which again, say it to yourself 50 if that's what it takes. We oftentimes just breathe through our chest. But it's really important that when you use this, you breathe through your stomach too. So make sure that your stomach is rising and falling just like your chest is. The reason why breathing is so important as a mantra is because breathing puts us in a spot where it buys us some time to regroup so we can make the decision we're comfortable with.
So not just physically regroup, but emotionally.
Mentally, right? Emotionally regroup. If I say to myself, hey, deep breath, breathe, just breathe, I stop for long enough, essentially back up kind of at the top to then make a decision whichever direction I want to go. The other thing about breathing that's so powerful is usually when we're in the space that we're breathing, we recognize the magnitude of the situation, and we usually come to realize it's not that big of a deal.
Just by taking a step back and physically gaining control.
So as soon as I start to breathe, I go, wait a second, okay, what do I want the most in this relationship? Well, I want her to know I love her. I want to truly understand her as I'm thinking about one of our daughters. And then from there, it puts me in a space where I go, wait a second, is this shower that big of a deal? Not so much, right? Or it's more, yeah, the shower might matter, but how you wash your hair, yeah, that's not that big of a deal. Right? Or if you want to pack your lunch instead of me, or you want to make your... No, it's not that big of a deal. And it's when I take the breath that I can go, oh yeah, this is not that big of a deal.
I love this
not
so
that big
much.
Of a deal.
5 parenting mantras. It's not about the behavior. Respond, don't react. What is the most important thing in this relationship? Be intentional and breathe, breathe, breathe. Thank you so much. We're going to put these together in a little graphic flip chart for you on our Facebook page. If you want to access those later, I'll be dialing those up. Very helpful, Heather. Thank you so much. Heather has a private practice. We'll post her contact information too on our website. If you, your relationship, or your family is in need of some extra coaching, look for that link at studio5.ksl.com.